Hello and welcome to another week of Light to My Path, our 2025 Bible reading plan. This week is the first full week in March. We're reading Acts 19 through Acts 23, and then we're also reading Psalm 18. This is a week of Acts where Paul is constantly having to defend himself, and he's being arrested and brought before different trials and all these sort of things. And it's fascinating to see Paul have to defend himself and how he makes his case and what his priorities are. But chapter 20 is one of these fascinating chapters because in it, Paul says goodbye to the Ephesian elders. And the church in Ephesus was a church that Paul spent a lot of time with. He loved them very deeply, and he knew that this was his going away party. This was going away speech. He wasn't going to see them again because he knew he was going to get arrested. He knew he was eventually going to die. He knew he was going to get taken to Rome. And so this is his chance to say goodbye to them. And he gives them such a beautiful going away speech. And he gives them some warnings that after he leaves, he knows that there's going to be savage wolves that come. But then look at what he says in verse 32 of chapter 20. He says, "And now I commend you to God," which means I have raised you up and I have taught you how to be the church. Now I'm gonna I'm commending you back to God. You're on your own with God, right? And so now it's on you. You guys have been trained up. Now it's on you, right? You and God. So I commend you to God and to the message of His grace. And that's what Paul was all about. The message of God's grace in and through Jesus Christ. We talked about grace for a while the last few weeks, right? We talked about grace, how it's the gift of God's own life that we don't deserve, we didn't earn, nothing like that. But it's what God does. It's a gift. It's a free gift that God gives us, and what it does is it establishes a relationship with Him, so that we can follow Him. And that's what it was all about for Paul. The message of His grace. It's a message, he says, that is able to build you up and give you the inheritance among all who are sanctified. The message of His grace is what we as the church are meant to hang on to. The message that even when we were sinners, Christ died for us. The message that even when we had run away from God, God came running after us. The message that even when we sin and make mistakes and fail again and again, God is still gracious with us. God still loves us. God forgives us. It's the message that before we deserved it, even when we don't deserve, which we never deserve it, even when we were enemies with God, Paul says when we are godless, that's when Christ died for us. The message of His grace is that God loves us because of who God is, not because of who we are. And our response to this grace it's called faith, and it's not it's not ours to even do. It's God. It's a gift. Grace is a gift that God gives us. When we as the church, when we as individual Christians can have our lives shaped by this grace and hang on to this grace and live from this grace, it builds us up into the men and the women who we were meant to be. That's what Paul's talking about here. It's able to build you up. It's able to give you the inheritance among all who are sanctified. And the inheritance here that Paul is talking about, and you can read about this in some of his letters, I think Ephesians especially, it's all that we have coming to us at the end of time, right? I mean, at the end of things. It's all that we have coming to us at the end because we're sons and daughters. We talked about that on Sunday, actually. But we get to actually experience pieces of it and live little bits of it now. When we turn the message of God into a different message, not of grace, of something else, we lose who we're meant to be. We lose that inheritance. And so as a church, let's stick to grace. Let's keep paying attention to grace, keep filling ourselves up with the message of God's grace, which is the message of what God has done for this world in Jesus Christ. And so I hope you have a great week of reading. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'd love to talk about them. All right, have a great week.